it's Miss Gould, media teacher here, and I'm going to be going through Clay Shirky's end of audience theory in this short video tutorial. It's the, second lockdown video I think I've done to date, and actually if you hear any noise in the background, I do apologise in advance. It would be my children, or it could be my cats, or it could be my husband. We're now the producers, and we're also the consumers. It's social networking platforms that have enabled us to produce our own stuff, and we don't have to be professionals to do that. In the past, media produced and audience consumed. Now everyone can produce, consume and share. There were media conglomerates and companies that produced content for a specific audience. The content was filtered before being released, but it's very different nowadays. The internet has forever changed the notion of media audiences. And that's because people are now creating their own media. Shirky has a term for this. He calls it prosumer, producer and consumer. And there is a huge amount of material being created daily. Mass amateurisation refers to the capabilities that new forms of media have given to non-professionals and the ways in which those non-professionals have applied those capabilities. Wikipedia is also a really good example of what Shirky calls cognitive surplus, where technology has made consumers into collaborators. He argues that younger people in particular just aren't watching television anymore and are instead using technology, particularly the internet, to produce their own content. Where once you had to rely on a media professional to produce content, nowadays anyone can produce content, and this is what mass amateurisation is. It doesn't have to just be Wikipedia, it can be a tweet. In the 20th century, media conglomerates produced content for a specific audience. It wasn't a two-way channel. Nowadays, people can produce, consume and share. So a user can go onto the Teen Vogue website, and if they like what they see or what they read, then they can share that on Twitter. On Facebook, you're able to contribute your comments and be part of a community. And another good example of mass amateurisation are parody vlogs like this one.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophia, if you didn't know that. Hi, I don't usually wear like hats or anything, but my hair was not doing bits today.
Social media allows active engagement. Shirky believes that we can't go back to traditional ways of doing things with regards to the media. We now expect to have a platform to be able to express our personal identity, and for media companies doing this, they create loyalty, even though some of the opinions they might get are not something that they would welcome. According to Shirky, the most effective ways to motivate in the 21st century are internal. It's not about people just sitting down watching television or just listening to the radio. These days we do things for our own satisfaction. There's been a significant change in consumption in the 21st century. For the first time in the history of television, some cohorts of young people are watching TV less than their elders. Young populations with access to fast interactive media are shifting their behaviour away from media that presupposes pure consumption. Shirky argues that television watching in the 20th century was essentially quite passive and again very much a one-way channel. Now, if you're watching something, you can be tweeting, Facebooking, Instagramming at the same time. The internet has changed the relationship between media and individuals forever, and here's Shirky explaining.
This is the media environment that I grew up in. This is the media environment many of you grew up in. A handful of large organizations could send messages, identical copies of any one message, to disaggregated people at the edges of a network. This is how audiences were assembled. This is how it worked whether you owned a printing press or a broadcast tower. This is how it worked whether you were in the business of making books or music or movies. Right? The internet changes that. Right? The first obvious way it changed it is it makes those lines two-way. Right? Now people can talk back to the media outlets. But that's not where the freakouts are coming from. The freakouts are coming from here. The freakouts are coming from the fact that any two people connected to the network can now speak to one another directly, no professionals anywhere in sight, and they can do it in very large groups. What we're used to in the media environment is a world in which highly managed message senders then get to assemble these audiences, right? That is, again, that's the media environment of the 20th century. What we've got now is this much looser, much frothier collection of any-to-any and many-to-many messages which can start from any place in the network and go to any place in the network. And the people here, right, are not operating in the traditional model of management, right? In a managed media environment, the logic is filter then publish. Decide whether or not a message is worth the expense. Should we give the author an advance for this book? Should we greenlight this movie? Should we record this album? And then you publish it, right? Out here, out in the network, the logic is publish then filter. Let anybody say anything and then sort the signal from the noise after the fact. It's that logic that the search engine business, among many others, is built on. And that change means that we don't just have a new way to reach the audience. It means that the idea of the audience as it was previously constituted is breaking down. We have to rethink everything that involves thinking about what the audience is and means and does.
So remember, huge amounts of media are produced now by amateurs, and then people filter it. Shirky says that the people formerly known as the audience have used their cognitive surplus to create the Lol Cats, a website that collects amusing photographs of cats with silly captions, and the likes of Patients Like Me, a platform for patients to share their experiences of illness. In Shirky's view, these social creations fall into a series of categories: personal, communal, public, and civic. The last one describing those shared projects whose mission is nothing less than to transform society. These high-minded web ventures, he suggests, are the most valuable of all. People now have a platform to express their opinions, whereas in the past they didn't.
These deals are phenomenal, and since I have to stay home, I'm shopping. #online, #Teen Vogue, #Quarantine Life, #Stay Home Challenge.
Have a think about this quotation by Shirky. Time Warner has called, and they want us all back on the couch, just consuming, not producing, not sharing, and we should say no. So why do you think that the big conglomerates don't want us to be producing? Human beings are social creatures, and now the technology is there for us to be able to produce our own content and to actually have a voice and be able to express our opinions. There is no going back to what was. Shirky on You Can Play This Game Too. What if all this time providing professional content isn't the only job we've been hiring media to do? What if we've also been hiring it to make us feel connected, engaged, or just less lonely? What if we've always wanted to produce as well as consume, but no one offered us that opportunity? The pleasure in You Can Play This Game Too isn't just in the making, it's also in the sharing. So, end of audience theory. We can no longer view media audiences like we used to. The great thing about Shirky's end of audience theory is that it really helps us to understand the modern audience, and we can compare it to the past. Now, although the audience has become very mistrusting of many mainstream media products, the mainstream media does still employ professionals. It employs journalists who are trained, which arguably makes it a little bit more reliable than news and information made by the audience. The audience writing without a qualification is called citizen journalism. Shirky's theory is helping us understand that the audience is being active and creating their own content as they want to express their own feelings and opinions. However, it can be negative as it opens up a gap for a mass amount of fake news. So, what do you think of Shirky's ideas on the end of the audience? Is this era of mass amateurisation a positive thing? Or are we in a period of intellectual and political chaos where things are more broken than fixed? I believe that this gives people a louder voice against big conglomerate media, as it is evident that we are force-fed beliefs and ideologies. However, there is the possibility of harmful news from uneducated people being heard by audiences. But in short, Shirky doesn't seem to have a problem with this. He welcomes the huge amount of novice content which is being produced and shared over the internet. It's not information overload, he says. It's filter failure.